Hey, thanks, Buki. Yeah, thanks, NASSCOM as well. Thanks for having me here. So this is UI tending to zero. Don't take it literally. It's just a little post-coffee provocation, really. Um, okay, so a quick background of myself. I started off as a product designer. I've been doing this for 16, 17 years now, longer than I can remember, actually. So, sorry. My earliest project was to go do a car. After I'd done a car, pretty much everything else seemed relatively simple. It was about as complicated as it got. And over time, we did appliances. And then, the Bangalore effect, a lot of technology companies came to us. And over the last 10, 12 years, a lot of our work has been in doing, I'd say, fairly esoteric connected devices. Some specialists, some mass market. And I like to think they all did fantastically well. That's not always true, though. So just some quick ones. That really is Obama holding one of our products that we designed. We did an IPTV interface way back in 2005. I would laugh at it now. It was a mosaic interface. Even to think of IPTV back then was pretty revolutionary. The thing that you see in the middle, that's a rugged handheld device, is something that's also turned up in Sheldon's room in season 3 of Big Bang Theory, so that's another claim to fame. Yeah, and this little thing down here is something that we did the interface and the design for. Is a product that is currently being used inside of the International Space Station. Honeywell manufactures it. Okay. So I have varied interests. Bang Design is the company that I set up 16 years ago. But over time, we've invested in several other startups. A couple of them have been exited. We've also incubated a couple of other ventures. We do about 3 to 4 new startups every year. So I think we've got about 10. There's some mentioned here, Simpals in the payment space. RideLogic is a very interesting device and application that enhances motorbike riding. Moonwalker is a very exciting sports brand that's coming up. We have a business interest in them. Beagle and Bow is a I have to admit it, it's a semi-floundering e-commerce operation in pet products. Okay, some quick background to the rest of the stock. So this is way back 12 years ago. One of the largest telecom operators came to us and they said, draft us a landscape of what India Mobile is going to be pretty soon. And so we came back with this panel and a fairly large story, and this is a truncated version of it. And we said, this girl's leaving college and she wants to know when the next bus is coming. And sure enough, she's looking it up on her phone. And then she finds out that her bus is full and she's not going to be able to get in. And she's not even at the stop yet, by the way. So then she's sitting around, thinking of what to do, and then she gets a call from a friend of hers. Then she eventually does get into the bus, and then she finds that some friends of hers are close by. So why not actually step out and have a good time with them? So this was received in a strange sort of fashion, because the first thing they said was, "Do you really think somebody is going to be staring at the screen all day?" And we said, we really think that they will, because India was already texting a lot back then. India was the SMS kingdom. And then they said, but none of this is ever going to work, because who's going to pay for these services? Who's going to pay to know that their friend is close by? It seems so silly and so on. But yeah, so I have a lot of history of having what I say being met with disbelief. Okay. So this is something that informs a lot of our current work. Money was bartering. Money, in all its forms, was the predominant currency for the longest time. But people are being increasingly stingy about other things as well. That's time, energy, attention, and also their emotion. So when you think about it, we're constantly looking for less time, less energy, less attention to be spent on especially tasks that you don't really like to do, tasks that you intend to do because you have to do it. You don't want to be spending too much time on it. On the other hand, you don't want to maximize the time that you spend on your own interests, because that's giving you your best emotional rewards. And money somewhere is actually the hardest to measure and is also probably the most flexible. That's probably the only reason why somebody stands in line at midnight, puts $900 to get the fastest boot-up device in the world, really. Okay, so fair to say that, so when I started doing product design in a big way, UX design was, it's in its infancy. You can tell from my gray hair. It's fair to say that most of the UX effort historically has been in, delivering content beautifully, and also delivering ads with them. So this is, the interest economy. So it's fair to assume again that people do get up in the morning saying, I would like to go read something because it's in my interest space. Whether it's about hiking or cycling or politics or even, more esoteric topics. And then you had the mainstream media who used design to the absolute fullest. And I think a lot of the techniques that we use even today really come from that practice and not from the practice I'm going to allude to pretty soon. So my view, of course, is that this is really broken because, there's those guys. There's Feedly and there's Flipboard and there's Medium who are doing a fascinating job, a fabulous job, really. And even they, I think, are sort of broken because I don't really want to go follow someone. It's almost like you're stalking someone now. I don't even know the person. On the other hand, I just have to say, I'm in my mid-40s, I have kids, I like rock music, I like cycling, throw something at me. Right? Okay, I really think that it's going to be just those guys eventually, yeah. All right, so if all this really was about delivering simple experiences, for the longest time, you could take an application, you could take digital content and simplify it, package it nicely, do all your metrics for the number of clicks and leading to your ads, of course, eventually. But it's getting a lot more complex outside of that world. And so if you just look at pretty much any other tech service that we know now, Uber, Airbnb, there is, of course, a front-end component, and we seem to be, this is the Apple effect, right? So you tend to look at something and you say it's beautiful, it looks so simple, the design is so easy, and so on. But in reality, the process that actually got you there was incredibly complex. So simple to the user, something that you strive towards. Simple to the user doesn't really mean simple in process. And that's really where the opportunity is. So just look at it, there's, very quickly, there's, you've got agreements with different companies, you've got to go manage communities. There's data science coming in, there's analytics coming in, you've got to bring it all together into this front end. Excuse me. You've got to go figure out how to go capitalize in time. There's over-the-air updates that have to happen very regularly. If you're in the device business, in the service and recall, and we know what's happening with the skeletons coming out of the closet in the auto industry with that one. So this is the intention economy. When I say intention, it's not necessarily interest and intention combined, but these are the things that you typically, you at the back of your mind, and you don't usually get up in the morning saying, I want to go make a payment. Right? You don't do that. It's like one of those things that you end up having to do. You worry about safety and security of your things, you worry about your own personal safety, you worry about your house safety, but that's really it. It's a worry. It's not something that you are interested in sort of doing. Same thing with things that go wrong. I think I must have met about 170 startups this year in very specifically taking the frustration out of living really in the city. Everything from delivering food to you to delivering a plumber to you for fixing your tap. So what we find is, while that's all good, they come to us saying, but it's so simple to go make this front end work. But the truth is that there's a huge amount of complication in the back end. And I think that there's two things happening. The first is that there's, I don't know how true this is, but just yesterday I was having a conversation with someone saying that in the most developed smartphone market in the world, which I always thought was India, but they said it wasn't. Um, that's apparently China. So there's 2/3 of the people are already not downloading a new app every month. So it scares people out, actually. Which means if you had a business and your business really was, no matter how big it was in the back end, if your front end was an app, if people are not going to download one more app, then you don't have a business. So there's something that can be done as far as that is concerned. Okay, so I think everybody who's come to us this year really was a marketplace and what was essentially an aggregator and a recommendation engine for solving the frustration problems of our daily life. But what's going to happen pretty soon to us is tailored decisions. That is, I actually do not want to even have to go make the decision. I would like the decision to happen pretty much on its own. What I'm saying is that there was a time when graphic designers decided all this stuff, and I'm now saying that psychologists are going to be helping us decide it. And ideally, there really is no physical or digital user interface at all. Okay, so let's see how this is working in some industries. So, when I graduated, I had to go get a bank account. It was pretty quick. That's what my parents told me. It still took me 3 days to get a bank account. After that, then they would still give me a check, and I would have to go deposit the check. And since I worked 6 days a week, and the bank was closed on Sundays, I ended up having to take leave to just go deposit the check. So fast forward pretty quickly. So the PC era happened. Things got connected. They were still, their own internal networks, and it wasn't quite really the internet. But you still did start getting, ATMs came around. Online transfer happened. When the mobile industry came in, you had people pitting one against each other. Your bank bazaar, you got the wallets, and you got merchant loyalty programs. It's all very exciting, but it's still very boring, really. So what's going to happen, I think, pretty certain of, because this is square in the area where we're working right now, is, I have 2 failed financial stroke payment startups, and we're in one more right now. Be pretty certain that a lot of things that we sort of think about today, how do and for someone like me, I'm not even interested in these things. How do I maximize the points on this card versus that card? I've got 3 credit cards. Oh, I forgot that loyalty card to bring into this place, and so on and so forth, are going to be things that are going to be residing in the background. So all that you do is decide, here are my targets. I'm going to take a holiday in 2017, and I want free tickets then to Peru, something like that, and do whatever you can to go make that happen for me. So when you walk into a merchant's place, you're just going to look at something, and it's then going to go pick up a card for you. What is that? It is questionable at this point in time. And when you do the transaction, and this is already happening in India, the pilots and rollouts for very, very quick 4-second payouts using your eyes because of Aadhaar are already happening, and it's very, very exciting. So what's going to happen is that just like in the other industry where you have the aggregators really sitting in the front end, you're going to start seeing the banks, the wallets, in my opinion, and really from what I'm seeing in the industry, go into the background, and so you sort of agnostic to what card you have, so long as you're getting the best deal out of it. Okay, so there's still, despite all the improvements in e-commerce, and it's fascinating, really, there's still many places where it is broken. Take this case of, I was just talking to someone who just did a 1,000-kilometer ride, and they have problems replacing parts in the cycle. And you can go to Amazon.com, you can go to Flipkart, you can go see the reviews. You will never get an answer back that is really going to inform you of a decision that you think you can trust, because you already have paradox of choice. You already have too much choice. You have no way of knowing whether, after you make a decision, whether you're going to feel good about it, because half the time people walk away saying, 12 television sets, I bought one for 65,000 rupees. Works okay, but should I have bought the other one instead? Now, you don't want to be sort of stuck in that quandary. So we're seeing, some of the things that we're working with a couple of startups is in an area like this. So clearly this is not a feature that is quite out there yet, and it's a feature that eventually has to plug in into some other platform. But it's pretty exciting. So we're looking at a virtual assistant for brands that says, okay, so this person goes to now, so what is this one made of? And it says case hardened steel. So is it good for me? And Shimano is the #1 brand in the space. It comes back and says, 26 users, we don't like it, but you know what? Because you're this kind of person, maybe you recommend something else to you. That removes paradox of choice. Okay, one of the most exciting projects we worked on, I hope none of you guys have to use it. No, actually, no, go ahead and buy it. It's fine, yeah. So this is a product that measures it's a little dinky device that measures your ECG. This is clinical grade ECG, EKG in Europe and in the US. And the history behind this is the common cliche. India is the diabetes and heart attack capital of the world. Very little is really being done there. And that really is the truth. None of us go visit physicians very often. None of us go visit cardiologists at all unless it really is an event. So we were trying to drive behavior change by getting people to measure very often, so you don't have to go to a lab, disrobe, lay on a couch and have somebody stick 12 electrodes on you. And while the process isn't expensive, and that's really nice in India, it is still painful. And if it's painful, then if it takes your time, it takes your energy, it takes your attention, you're not doing it. So we made this device which we first started saying, okay, so it's a wellness product. And we went through multiple iterations, of course. What you're seeing is pretty much the end result. What this is allowing people to do is to go build a history. And so when they finally do have an event, and hopefully they never do, or they walk into a cardiologist's office, they have a history of 100 ECGs that have been scrutinized legally in India by a real cardiologist for as less as 25 to 30 rupees. At the same time, they also have, they will eventually have the same thing scrutinized by algorithms themselves. Now, you don't need to see your phone for this. We started off with an app for the phone. We started this project at the time when smartphones were just 2-3% in India. So you see that the Java app there. The Java app actually was very popular, but it still required you to go use the device to go do certain things. By the time we finally launched it, there is that version, but the next version that's going to come is something that we're working on with somebody else actually, is where you don't even need to, you just start your device, you take your reading, it's seamlessly gone to some cardiologist somewhere, and there's going to be a response back to you or not. Now, there are ethical implications here because, so surely you've got some private health data there and it's gone to someone, you don't know that someone. Would you take a recommendation from someone you don't know that says that you need to go visit a qualified doctor because, and we're sorting that sort of dilemma out, but seamless health is clearly something that we're seeing pretty soon. When we started this project, there was no Google Fit, there was no Apple Health. This is about 4 or 5 years ago. And I can easily see that pretty soon, you may have Jawbone, you may have Fitbit, but you probably will not be downloading their apps. Because, in the CES that I was there about 3 years ago, there were 360 companies with this, and this is one of ours. It's crazy. So we're not downloading 300 applications, no way. Okay, this is a self-blood glucose monitoring brand, one of the top 6 in the world. And they came to us and they said, they're in the stripping business. They strip clubs, that's what they call themselves. They sell strips. They give away the device for, at a loss sometimes, and they expect you to buy strips and test very often. One of the funny things they found in India was, before they came to us, was that people bought the devices, they got the free strips with them, and they never finished the initial pouch. Because people would buy the device and eventually they just fall off the ball about testing. And in their home markets, people would test in the morning before they went for a run. They had to go for a party in the evening. They would test again, especially someone who'd been either borderline or diagnosed with diabetes. So they said, what gives? And the standard thing was, India is going to change with the smartphone the way America changed with the automobile. So we're going to do something with the smartphone. And most of these times, and we get hit up about 2 or 3 times a year with things like this. It's a Bluetooth device that's going to measure some medical parameter. So when we went out there, we found that it's, people bought the device, but firstly, two things. Firstly, they didn't really have the same, well, they had a much lower morbidity index. They didn't think that they were going to die because they're borderline high sugar because they had diabetes. There's Baba Ramdev, there's walking in the morning, I'm going to test once in 3 months and I'll be fine, which is surprising to them. The second one was, Indians don't like to lance themselves. You might have that thing, you still got to go prick your finger and get the blood out and stick it on that thing. We just don't like that at all. So it was a big surprise to them when we went back to them and said, you don't need a device, you don't need nothing. You just need people to do it for them. And there are 550,000 pharmacies in India, and we just ran a pilot with one chain, and the uptake was tremendous because people walked into pharmacies, and we didn't know this until then, people walked into pharmacies every week. We are a very sick nation, I must tell you. And when you walk in there, the guy knows you. He knows you for 5 years on an average. And he says, you didn't test last week. Do you want to test now? Buy this thing for 25 rupees, and you get an SMS back that says, this is what your blood profile is. So yeah, people were the best user interface. Yeah. Okay, this is designed by a competitor, and we got to give them credit. It's a really nice product. It's not out yet, but I've seen the video, and I hope it really works the way it does. It's so I really think this is the future of home automation. So people are going to buy these things that will eventually not even be seen. They'll be in the walls. So this is one where you just walk in and you say, Ivy, shut the lights off. Ivy, I need an Uber. And well, sure enough, you're going to have, it's going to announce that your taxi is pretty close. So you don't have a screen, and you're probably never looking at your phone or the really fancy iWatch that you bought. And the idea is that it will still, allow you to do a lot of other things that you were doing otherwise, and not be distracted from let's say, your interests. Even if you're reading the newspaper, but you still wanted a taxi, so you're not distracted. Another much lauded and much, I think, also failed effort that came from Amazon. And actually, it's a really nice product. I've seen this in use, not in India. I've seen this in use. I'm not so sure why it isn't really taken up. I think it had to do with the way this product looks, really. Okay, so one of the things with the conventional UX, as we knew it when we started doing it ourselves, was that they were either predictable workflows, that is, a person came to the site and people said something, they looked for something, they were metricable, they were measurable. They were also, you could also goad them towards some direction through design. It's getting very complicated with this because we have long hours of exposure when we do this sort of testing, and we find that there's 5 different sets of people being tested, and there's no consistency in the way in which somebody approaches this. So this is from a home automation startup, and really this is, while we were trying to look for funding, this is this is a panel from that. But the idea was that there's someone who's just bored, and she's just going to call her friends. Now, how she calls her friends is again questionable, but the thing is when she walks into the house, she just says, Nina or Cortana or Siri, I want the ambiance of Tuscany right now, or I want the ambiance of Nagpur right now. That's my hometown. It's pretty warm, but I don't know who'd want it. But or we're going to have a dance party right now. Versus saying, okay, let's figure out what lights should I go and set. What's the temperature of the AC that I need? What should the fan speed be on? What's the sound level? You don't want to go make those decisions. You just want to go have a good time. This is from last year. This is a project we were doing with a fairly large global appliance brand. A lot of these things to us start from saying we want an app, and they've got an appliance and they want to connect Bluetooth to it or Wi-Fi to it, and then see everything on the phone. Now, we'd be the first ones to say mobile phones are leading the world. Mark Henderson said it, of course, before we did. And software is leading the world as well. Everything is going to cede control to the mobile phone, except when it's just too much. So this is one of those cases where we we're seeing that, specifically in physical products, there was a time when you sold things based on promotion and branding and how much visibility you got. A lot of that is changing with a new kind of ecology, and that ecology is driven by what we call the exhaust data from products. So if you can imagine, how many of you have water purifiers at home? I'm just curious. Water purifiers, just 5 of you water purifiers at home? I'm surprised. Yeah. Sitting in this country? Yeah, I'm really surprised too. That's a big market then for this. Yeah, sure. That's pretty much the last thing. Yeah. How many of you would remember when you bought it? Some of them are 10 years old. Some of them are 15 years old, right? Eureka Forbes and the Aqua Shores and so on, which is really nice, but that's giving zilch to the equity of those brands, because, so all that we're saying here is, of course, it's in its lifetime, a washing machine has washed so many tons of clothes and processed so much of water. Why aren't you telling the user that? Why aren't you making them feel good about the brand? Second thing is, in a case like this, so it's processed 36,000 liters of water of pure water for your family, and it's still going strong. And if you ever needed to really interact with the device, there is an app. Xiaomi has this thing where you no longer need, if you're licensed with Xiaomi, I think pretty much in the next version, you no longer will have to build your own app. You will just turn up on Xiaomi's interface that says, appliances at home and so on. And we're going to see that with every other forked Android pretty soon. Right. AI is the death of most designers, in my opinion, at least design as we knew it. So there's some pretty interesting startups that we're working with in a space like this. This is the company that Google bought. Who bought this company? But what they've done ever since the acquisition is, you just put it up in some part of your house, it decides if something interesting is going on. It decides if something interesting is going on. You don't have to reach for your phone. And it records 15 minutes. I have not seen anything much cooler than this. You got your kid at home alone, playing at the ball, playing at the dog. You got a bunch of friends over, you try and reach for your phone, you try and reach for a camera, you try and reach for something else, and then the moment is sort of lost. You don't lose those moments in this. Of course, you do have to go and consume the video again in using a phone. All right. Another thing we're seeing is this thing called ActiveDominancy, which is you are inactive on something, you are dominant on something, but there's a whole universe, that pretty much a complex system that I talked about, that's very active to deliver what you wanted. This is again designed by a competitor, full credit to them. This is a device that people in the US are falling over themselves. Well, people in California are falling over themselves to buy, stick it in their front yard, and the only thing it really does is decide when the sprinklers come on. And it's very popular. All right, so what are the other interfaces that we're working with? The one that I'm wearing is something where I can program it to,
I didn't do anything, Vinay.
So I tap twice and, yeah, I tap twice and it starts Strava for me. I'm on a cycle ride, I take a break and I want, Strava to stop. Of course, Strava is an auto stop now, but I could potentially start my ride without actually having to bring up the app and then say, do a couple of clicks and then start. The other one we're seeing is haptics. A lot of the interfaces on things like this will eventually be, right now it's very binary buzzes. I think that those are changing. The technical challenges there, but they are definitely going to go and change. You will find devices like this also being used for gaming. There's one that we're working on with this company itself where you use a gesture. It's 2 minutes. Yeah? You use a gesture and it's measuring the equivalent of an ECG on my wrist. So the moment I do this, it knows and I'm sort of shooting a gun. So again, I don't have to go buy one more product. I don't have to go own one more thing. Of course, voice, as I mentioned, is a pretty big thing. So what are the big challenges we face here? So traditional UX, bless all the guys who did some really great UX design work all those years ago. They created a language that is pretty much universal. Everybody understands if I see a play button and I know that it's going to play something or it's going to do something. In the new interfaces, one of the biggest challenges we face is that there is no accepted vernacular. Right from turning a switch on, it works different ways in different countries. But we're hoping that things will fall in place. That's really my talk. Yeah.